Part 13 of the Corvette build. In this part, we're going to work on modifying the GTO VaraRam intake, and we're going to start getting the bumpers put back together. So this is the VaraRam intake for a GTO. I saw that it had other people have modified them to make them fit, so I bought one. And first things I noticed is when it lines up with the throttle body, it pushes it way too far to this side. You see? And there's still room on this side. So what I'm gonna do is pull that throttle body back off, and I'm gonna move this to where I want it, and then I'm gonna cut the inside of here to fit the throttle body. The other problem is the gap here is pretty small, and I still gotta put a MAF in here. So I need to somehow figure out how this can all get pushed forward, because this is where the filter is supposed to sit. And then I think it's hitting the radiator hose over here. So we may have to cut a little bit more out of it. Yeah, right here, so it can't sit down far enough, and that'll help with the filter clearance if I can get that to go down. So we'll see how it ends up once I start cutting it and moving it over. All right, so it turns out that the 85 millimeter MAF, or these are the ones that would be on a C5 or on the 6 liter, fit perfect into the filter. Pretty snug, so that'll tighten down with the clamp just fine. So I took down my 4-inch coupler, and there's a bit of an angle there, so I cut it on both sides to get 2.5 inches in the top and 2 in the bottom, and that fits pretty well right there. I would like to move it back a little bit, but the distance, the flange on the MAF's is hitting the throttle body right here. So I may end up cutting this down, but not yet, so we'll see. My biggest worry here, the radiator is what's holding the filter up. My biggest worry is the hood's not going to clear this. So I need to get somebody over here to help me get the hood on here and see if it's going to clear. And if it doesn't, then I'm going to try moving it back. And there's a ledge in the radiator where this can sit down needed. Once I get that placed, then I'll work on getting this put into place to funnel the air into the filter. Okay, on that last smash, that was right there, just barely a thin bit of Play-Doh was left. So that's telling me that we have the clearance now. It might rub a little bit, so I might do a little bit more. Like there's a little notch here I can take off, which I think will move the filter back a little bit. And if it goes back, then it's going to drop down the incline. But what we did, I went through and I cut off that large hump. See, this has a large hump right here. So I cut that off. I could probably go a little bit more on that too. Would take it to the sander. And then on the bottom side where this contacts, I sanded that down some too. And I may go ahead and take a little bit more there as well. But it's fitting, so that's good. We're gonna get lots of air. I do want to cut off the front of this so we can get more air coming up over the radiator. And then I want to fill that in with, I'll have to find some plastic and I'll epoxy that in to fill that in. But the whole point is to keep the hot engine air in the engine compartment and cool air on the filter. To get it to fit over the radiator a little bit better, I cut off this front section. And now to make it, get the air over into the box better, I'm going to heat and I'm going to bend this down. And then I'll keep fitting it in the car until I get it where I want it to be. Okay, I got the lip bent down. You can see it sits perfectly flush, and you actually have to pull down on this to bolt it in place. So that makes nice for the air to come up over the top of that. But now it is pushed this down a little bit, and we're touching the power steering pulley here, and we're touching the radiator hose over there just a little bit. So I'm gonna heat it some more in here and pull this up like this. And then I'll work on cutting the material to fill in this hole here and get it closer to the throttle body. Okay, I got my template made. I make sure that I have places behind where I can adhesive the new piece of plastic to the old. And then once I get that in there, I'll have to make a hump here for this hose. And then we'll be pretty close to done. Okay, so that worked out actually way better than I thought it was going to. It's my first time working with plastic. It was actually pretty easy to mold, and now I can go in here and I can epoxy the four locations down, and then I'll fill the seam with epoxy as well. And that should be good for the back. And then, like I said before, I'll have to come in and make a hump for that next. All right, I got it all filled in. It's not the prettiest in the world, and if I did it again, I'd probably glue the pieces on the bottom side so you didn't see them. So I'm gonna have to trim just a little bit here to fit the coupling going through, but I think it turned out pretty good. This will be good enough for now. In the future, I'll figure out how much higher these need to be to touch the hood and take these off and extend it up, and that way it pushes up against the hood and gets a good seal. But for now, this will do just fine. One viewer mentioned that these cars are notorious for sucking the lower radiator hose shut and to put a spring in it. So from Summit, this is the biggest spring that I could find. You can see it's pretty close, but it could be a little bit bigger. So I'm gonna untwist it a little bit to make it bigger to fit the hose. So you just twist it as it'll work its way through. You see I've got it there, and now I can't even squeeze it in my hand, so that should keep that from collapsing. And then it comes with plenty, so I'll have extra for future need. assembled the rear bumper support. This thing is overly complicated for no reason. So you saw how much of a pain that was. I did have a few bolts that I forgot to paint, like these down here. So I'll just take and shoot them with some flat black paint before I put it together. The aluminum parts, I did it kind of off to the side, but instead of painting those, they had a little bit of corrosion on them, but not much. I'm just gonna cover those in fluid film and see how that works, since aluminum's pretty good at not corroding anyway. This rubber strip, if I remember right when I took it apart, these had some kind of rivet or something in it that just I had to drill out or it fell apart. So I'm gonna go try to find some little plastic Christmas tree things. The ones I have are too big. So once I get that done, then we will install it back in the car, get the rear bumper installed. Let's see how much this thing weighs. $49.5 pounds. Ridiculous. All right, in this part, we took the GTO VaraRam intake and we modified, we heated, we cut, we glued some plastic, and we got it to fit really well under the hood. That'll be a nice cold air intake for this car. And we started putting the rear bumpers on. This video is getting pretty long, so I'm gonna cut it here, and we'll finish that in the next video.